I recently did a video on 10 DC villains that would make for great heroes. I did come to this realization that even when I was recording that video, but especially afterwards, we see so many villains who switch side to heroism nowadays that it feels as if a lot of villains in the DC world aren't as villainized as they once were. A lot of them are anti-heroes at the very least too. The much more interesting topic is DC heroes that would make for great villains. I think that would make a little more captivating stories instead of always seeing the opposite, as it seems to be quite the trendy thing today. Just like that previous video, I have 10 heroes for you to go over to the dark side. Let's start with number 10. Starting with Miss Martian. There is not anything that Miss Martian, I want to say, has done in the past to make me feel such a way in which she should be a villain. More so what it is the fact that she's not a green Martian, she is a white Martian. Being a white Martian does make you a little more aggressive, dare I even say just villainous, more than it would a green Martian. From one point of view, when you do look at the villains that Martian Manhunter has, I would say about 80% of his villains are just ex-Martians that he once knew or survived the destruction of Mars, who have now just turned bad, whether they be green or white. But you could even give Miss Martian to other characters. Maybe she could become a Teen Titan villain of some sorts. I think it would be very interesting if she was a character who was being trained and taught by J'onn J'onzz. The white Martian within her took over and really responds to being a villain more than she does a hero. Now, the next one I have is either Hawkman and or Hawkgirl. A big inspiration for why I went with these two characters is because of how they were depicted at one point in the Justice League animated cartoon. You could make these characters true conquerors. They are all physically peak humanoids. They have super strength amongst a ton of other abilities. They come from a planet that houses nth metal, which really gives them a form of profitability and power over neighboring races or sections of the galaxies or universe. Even their ages, at the age of 100, they look like a 30-year-old. They have a lot more lifespan than, say, humans would. They come from a world that I could see being a race that takes over other cultures and planets. Even too, when you connect them to Egyptian mythology. Egyptians built an empire. I could see Thanagarians being connected to something like that in the sense of being able to build their own empire on many different worlds and planets. And I don't necessarily want to say Hawkman or Hawkgirl would be inherently evil. In the nature of them being spacefaring conquerors, they would be two characters that would immediately have to be looked at as an opposing enemy of ours. Then I have Raven. This is a character that over many different media and storylines, we've seen versions of her where she brings out an evil side of her. Being the daughter of Trigon, I have to imagine there must be some elements to her character and her relationship with her father that would just make it so easy to go bad and to work with him. Trigon himself has even mentioned that if Raven ever went to her highest potential, there would potentially be no stopping her. There would be no one in the universe as powerful as her. So what if we had an extremely evil Raven who says, my father has outlived my purposes, in which she kills Trigon and now becomes the hellish divine leader. Raven also brings in a horror factor as well, where I do believe she would be one of the scariest villains that DC could ever potentially see. Then I move into another Teen Titan in Beast Boy. This is a character that's had many different origins, whether they be stark differences or very slim differences. Suffering through his parents' death, you could put him in situations where, because of his disease, his disorder, the ability he simply has to change into any living animal he wants, he was taken in by corporations and scientists. this and studied and tested on, maybe even tortured in certain ways. Even though that could bring out the best in a character in the sense of removing themselves from that situation down the line and being able to realize that I had to go through that, I wouldn't want anyone else to go through it, might as well be a hero. What if something like that turned him into the opposite of situations? This is what I have been turned into. This is how redundant my life was to so many other people around me. I'm hateful, I'm angry, and I want to portray those feelings and act of violence onto other people. Beast Boy as a villain could be very dangerous and honestly quite gruesome. Could you imagine the horrors he would inflict if he chose to turn into a tiger or a gorilla or a bear or a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and the amount of damage and death he would leave behind him? He might not be the most physically strong character out there in the DC world, but we do have to count ourselves lucky that he is a hero, because if he did use these powers in very specific ways, we would see a lot of bloodshed. Now, I decided to go into Supergirl. Very similar with Martian Manhunter in the sense where a lot of his villains are just other Martians. We've seen a lot of that with Superman, where a lot of his villains are just other Kryptonian types who just happen to be bad. But I would make her a villain not in the sense where she's all about Krypton, hates Earth, and hates her cousin for loving humanity and the rest of Earth. And I wouldn't make her a villain in which she joins General Zod because of that. She would really have no allegiances herself. Supergirl hates both sides in the sense of, I was on our planet when it was destroyed. Depending on the origin you want to use, whether it was Brainiac or whether it was just the simple destruction of Krypton. No matter the origin you choose, Supergirl does have a lot of hatred and a lot of anger for what happened to her people, her planet, and her loved ones. I could see her being a character who's not evil in the sense of, I want to kill everyone and destroy everything. I could just see her being someone who has vendettas against certain characters, maybe like a Zod or a Brainiac, but does not care about any of the damage she's willing to inflict. If her goal is to kill Brainiac or someone else and innocent people are getting caught in the crosshairs, she doesn't care. Then I went with Mary Marvel. And the biggest reason why I did this was because pre-New 52, she had a huge storyline where she inherited the powers of Black Adam, and she even became a right-hand woman to Darkseid for a little while. I always thought that story arc for her was really awesome, and I would like to see her as maybe a character who once again is not inherently evil, but will carry on evil acts if it means that the goal she has in mind is accomplished. It could be very interesting to see her as someone who was Mary Marvel alongside Captain Marvel, somebody who did do good, but just over the years fighting alongside Billy Batson, not seeing enough change in the world. She just feels as if it's not the right calling for her. She eventually gets herself into a situation where she is the Mary Marvel who's a little more bad, I guess you could say, anti-villain. She wears a Captain Marvel outfit of black and gold like Black Adam instead of being the bright red and gold of a Shining Hope. What that would do for Billy and his family to see someone that they all grew up with and loved go to the opposite side, I think that would cause a lot of divots within their relationships and their friendships to question how Mary could go that way and the fact that she's never coming back to their side. Next, I have Wonder Woman. If you simply made Themyscira, the Amazon women, and Diana herself women of war, she would be insanely deadly. If you made her as ruthless as Greeks have been described to be in real life history, yeah, she'd be evil. We have iterations of her where she is more so evil. In Justice Wonder Woman, the absolute bane of all Wonder Woman existences. I absolutely hate her character, but that goes to show that they did a great job in making you hate her, which is the goal. And even in the Flashpoint universe, where she is a lot more ruthless than her other counterparts, we know what an evil Wonder Woman would look like. Bring her over into man's world and just have them sweeping country by country, eliminating all man, and not just men, but women who live in man's world as well, eradicating the scum of what Earth actually holds and replacing everyone with Amazonian women. Now, an evil Wonder Woman, you're just making Wonder Woman a person who sees red, a real warrior princess. And all you have to add to her is a flair of someone who does like to conquer and obtain power. Then I have Red Hood. Of course, this is someone who started off as a hero, went to being a villain, who then has gone back to being a hero or anti-hero. But what if he simply just stayed a villain? I think there are many reasons as to why he probably would work better as a villain than he does a hero. And I do also believe there are a lot of people in the fan base who would prefer him to be a villain rather than now being a member of the Bat family. When it really comes down to it, he is a character that I think people would say anybody can be rehabilitated. Someone who has forgotten and gotten rid of all of their morals and ethics, but then was capable of retaining all of them, or at the very least most of them at the end of the day. But what if they couldn't rehabilitate him? What if he flipped the bird at Batman and said, I don't care, this is who I am now? He would be a character in which other villains, especially in Gotham City, would have to defend themselves against, almost as if Red Hood is the villain to their version of what a hero would be. And I know it's comic books, fantastical worlds, you can write these stories in any way you want, but sometimes I do find it very hard to believe that Red Hood came back in the nature of what he was, using guns, killing people left and right, and then all of a sudden going back to being a Bat family member. I just feel as if a lot of trauma that has been inflicted onto him and trauma he has inflicted onto other people, all the lives he has taken, perhaps an anti-villain is what he is more appropriate of being. Now we look at Dr. Fate, in which he is an agent of order, the Lord of Order being Naboo. What if he was an agent, or Kent himself, a Lord of Chaos? What if you had someone on the level of Dr. Fate whose main goal and priority was to ensure that chaos reigned supreme across all of Earth, if not the entire universe? I think Dr. Fate is a top 10 most powerful character in DC Comics. And even as an agent of order, whereas he is good, he can't always involve himself in every conflict. But if he does need to be involved in a conflict, more often than not, he does what needs to be done in order to have order. Instead, you put him in situations where he could potentially cause chaotic rampages. That would be crazy. Dr. Fate already has the temperament and the attitude, the personality to be quite a self-assured villain. Somebody who's very confident in his abilities, doesn't get beat that often, if not at all. I don't know how many people are stopping that. Then last but certainly not least, I, of course, had to go with Batman. Just like Superman, Batman is another character that a lot of people can struggle to see as a villain. We've had 80 years of history that pretty much solidifies Batman and Superman are heroes. I don't mind seeing an evil version of them from time to time. When you look at who Bruce Wayne is, there are so many instances and situations that have stemmed from the death of his parents that could have made him evil. I could probably stop talking about this and simply leave you with Owlman. That's all you would really need to know. But what Bruce Wayne had to go through witnessing the death of his parents, and then all the high octane training and studying he would have had to do in those 7 to 8 years where he traveled the world, I'm sure he came across many different viewpoints and battling opposing opinions that he crafted on his own. Should I go down this path or should I go down this path? Should I be a sign of justice or a figure of revenge? And what if he did become a person who became that figure of revenge? Or what if he simply became a character where one day he snapped and said, Batman's not cutting it anymore, at least not the way I'm doing it. I gotta start killing these people. Superman has claimed he would become the most dangerous human being on Earth if he went evil. I don't know who is stopping the guy, considering the character has been made to have contingency plans on contingency plans, in which those plans also have another level of 10 contingency plans. I even talked about this recently in my most recent World's Finest Unpopular Opinion video. If Batman ever went evil, there is no longer any form of morality. There's no sense of right or wrong, good or bad. Batman would just do what he wants to do now. Any relationship, friendship, or connection he might have held very dearly with even some of his best friends, brothers, lovers, whatever it might be, they no longer matter. Batman is someone who has been able to master everything, including his emotions, and he would be able to shut off his emotions almost immediately and make it seem like he cares about nothing. There would be no talking down Batman. There would be no getting through to Batman. All he would need to focus on for the rest of his days is how his parents looked as they bled out, dying in the gutter, and no one was there to help, save, or protect him. Batman has always reminded me of somebody who could have easily gone left or right, good or evil, and he decided to go good. But what if he did otherwise? Batman would be a villain who would likely always have the upper hand. If people weren't scared of getting chased down a dark alleyway as he glides in behind you and breaks your legs and arms, imagine what he's gonna do now. You wouldn't even have time to understand the situation, let alone be scared, because you would already be dead before you even realize he's there. So there you go. 10 heroes that I personally think would make for great villains. Just as I said at the beginning of the video, we now see a lot today of villains transferring over to heroes in DC. Maybe we should start to see more heroes transfer into villains. It might make things a little more interesting. So you guys leave in the comments below what heroes you think would make great villains in the DC universe. That is all I have for you on this one, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and until the next time, I will talk to you all very soon.